great chamber floated in the darkness of space above Thesson Prime. It was the largest structure ever built by the combined efforts of the galaxy's civilizations. A hollow sphere of crystal and metal, 500 kilometers across, spinning slowly against the stars. Inside, the representatives of 847 different species had gathered for an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Velrix stood at his designated position in the vast circular hall. His body was tall and thin, covered in silver scales that caught the light from 1,000 floating screens. He was old even by the standards of the Cenari Collective, and he had seen many debates in this chamber, but none had carried the weight of this one. The topic was humanity. For 3 standard cycles, the Council had argued about what to do with the aggressive species from the 3rd planet of an unremarkable yellow star. The humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. In galactic terms, they were newborns, infants crawling out of their cradle and immediately reaching for weapons. Velrix watched the screens as they displayed the evidence against humanity. Colony ships launched without permission into restricted space, mining operations that ignored the boundary treaties, weapons research that violated a dozen different protocols, and worst of all, the speed, the terrible, unnatural speed of their advancement. Most species took thousands of years to progress from basic space travel to interstellar colonization. The humans had done it in less than a century. Their scientists seemed to treat the laws of physics as suggestions rather than rules. Their engineers built things that should not work, and then made them work anyway through sheer stubbornness. The elder races were afraid. Velrix could see it in the way they held themselves, in the nervous movements of tentacles and claws and wings. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years now looked at these short-lived mammals and saw their own extinction. A Croshan warrior named Admiral Darkith rose to speak. His people were reptilian, cold-blooded, with armored hides and eyes that had evolved to track prey across vast distances. They were the Council's enforcers, the ones who carried out the unpleasant decisions that maintained galactic order. "I have fought the humans," Darkith said, his voice rumbling through the translation systems. "Twice at the frontier. Both times we outnumbered them. Both times we had superior technology. And both times, they found ways to hurt us that we did not expect." He touched a control, and the screens showed footage from a battle. Council warships, sleek and powerful, exchanging fire with crude human vessels. The human ships were ugly things, all angles and exposed systems. They should have been destroyed in minutes. Instead, the footage showed human pilots flying directly into the Council formation, ignoring all tactical doctrine. They rammed their ships into the larger vessels. They overloaded their reactors to create improvised explosives. They died in huge numbers, but they took Council ships with them. "They do not fight like civilized beings," Darkith continued. "They fight like animals protecting their young, with desperation, with madness, with a complete disregard for their own survival." The chamber was silent. Every species understood what Darkith was saying. The humans could not be contained. They could not be negotiated with. They would keep expanding, keep fighting, keep building, until they either ruled the galaxy or died trying. Velrix felt the weight of history pressing down on him. He was about to propose something terrible, something that went against every principle the Cenari had built their civilization upon, but he saw no other choice. "I call for a vote," he said, his voice steady despite his inner turmoil. "The human species represents an unacceptable threat to galactic stability. I propose preemptive action. Full sterilization of their homeworld and all colonial holdings." The words hung in the air. Genocide. He was proposing genocide. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some species objected on moral grounds. Others worried about the precedent it would set. A few suggested alternative solutions, containment strategies, diplomatic overtures. But in the end, fear won. It always did. The vote was called. Of the 847 species represented, 831 voted in favor of the strike. The remaining 16 abstained. Not a single species voted against. Velrix felt something break inside him as the numbers appeared on the screens. He had just condemned an entire species to death. Billions of lives erased from existence because they were too successful, Too fast, too frightening. Admiral Darkith accepted the mandate with a formal salute. His face showed no emotion, but Velrix thought he saw something like satisfaction in those cold eyes. The Croshan had wanted this outcome from the beginning. "I will need a fleet of 40,000 vessels," Darkith said. "The humans have spread across multiple systems. We must strike all targets simultaneously to prevent any survivors from escaping." The Council approved his request without debate. Resources were allocated, ships were assigned, crews were selected. The largest military operation in galactic history was organized in a matter of days. Velrix watched the preparations from his private quarters aboard the chamber station. Through the viewport, he could see the warships gathering. Thousands of vessels from dozens of species, all united in their fear of humanity. It was, in a dark way, the greatest achievement of galactic cooperation in centuries. He thought about the humans he had met over the years. Diplomats and traders, scientists and soldiers. They had been strange creatures, certainly. Emotional, unpredictable, prone to both great kindness and terrible violence. But they had also been curious, creative, and surprisingly funny. One human diplomat had told him a joke once, something about a priest, a rabbi, and an alien walking into a bar. Velrix had not understood the humor, but he had appreciated the attempt at connection across species barriers. That diplomat would soon be dead, along with everyone she had ever known or loved. The fleet departed 3 days later, 40,000 warships, carrying enough firepower to crack planets and boil oceans. Admiral Darkith commanded from the bridge of his flagship, a massive dreadnought named the Certainty of Purpose. Velrix did not watch them leave. He could not bear to see the instruments of his decision disappear into the darkness between stars. Instead, he sat alone in his quarters, staring at a small artifact on his desk. It was a gift from that human diplomat, a simple thing made of wood and metal, with moving parts that served no practical purpose. The humans called it a music box. When wound, it played a melody that Velrix found haunting and beautiful. He wound it now and listened to the tiny mechanical song. In 14 rotations, the fleet would arrive at Earth. In 14 rotations, this music would become a relic of an extinct species, a ghost sound from a dead world. Velrix told himself he had made the right choice. He told himself the humans were dangerous, that they would have eventually destroyed the Council anyway. He told himself that quick extinction was more merciful than a prolonged war that would kill billions on both sides. He told himself many things. None of them helped him sleep. The journey through slipspace took 14 standard rotations. Admiral Darkith used every moment of that time to prepare his crews for what was coming. He had studied humanity more carefully than any other officer in the Council fleet. He had read their history, analyzed their tactics, watched recordings of their strange entertainments. He knew that humans were most dangerous when cornered. They did not surrender. They did not accept defeat. They found ways to win that no sane species would ever consider. In their own history, they had a word for it. They called it spite. Darkith ran simulation after simulation on the fleet's tactical computers. He planned for every possible human response: orbital defense platforms, hidden weapons, suicide attacks, nuclear devices planted in their own cities, ready to detonate rather than allow conquest. He even planned for the possibility that the humans had somehow built a weapon capable of destroying the entire fleet. He did not plan for what he actually found. The Certainty of Purpose emerged from slipspace at the edge of the Sol system, followed by 40,000 warships in perfect formation. Darkith stood on the bridge, his clawed hands gripping the command rail, his eyes scanning the tactical displays. The displays showed nothing. No enemy vessels, no weapons platforms, no defensive grids. The space around them was empty except for the distant glitter of the system's planets and the yellow glow of its star. Darkith felt his scales tighten with unease. "Scan again," he ordered. "Full spectrum, maximum sensitivity." His officers obeyed. The results came back the same. The Sol system was silent. "Perhaps they are hiding," suggested his second-in-command, a younger Croshan named Vectis. "The humans are known for ambush tactics." "Where would they hide 40,000 ships worth of opponents?" Darkith replied. "No, something is wrong. He ordered scout ships forward, small, fast vessels equipped with advanced sensors, crewed by officers who understood that their mission might be their last. They accelerated toward the inner system, sending back constant reports. Mars was the first target. The human colony there had been established 80 years ago and now held a population of 2 million. The scouts approached carefully, weapons ready, expecting traps. They found a ghost world. The domed cities were intact. Power systems still hummed with energy. Atmosphere processors continued their endless work of making the thin, Martian air breathable. But there were no humans. Not in the streets, not in the buildings, not anywhere. The scouts landed and sent teams to investigate. They found apartments with meals still sitting on tables, the food long since rotted. They found vehicles parked in neat rows, waiting for drivers who would never return. They found personal belongings scattered everywhere, as if the owners had simply vanished in the middle of their daily routines. But they found no bodies, no signs of violence, no evidence of any kind of evacuation. Similar reports came from the asteroid mining stations, from the research bases on the moons of Jupiter, from the small settlement on Titan. Every human installation was the same: intact, powered, empty. Darkith ordered the fleet to proceed to Earth. The human homeworld hung in space like a blue and white jewel, beautiful and silent. The orbital stations that should have challenged them drifted unmanned. The satellites that should have tracked their approach continued their program functions without human oversight. Landing parties descended to the surface. They spread across every continent, searching for any sign of the 8 billion humans who should have been there. They found nothing but ghosts. Cities stood pristine under clear skies. New York, Tokyo, London, Cairo, Mumbai. Each one was a perfect snapshot of civilization, frozen in a single moment. Cars sat in traffic that would never move. Shops displayed goods that would never be purchased. Schools waited for students who would never arrive. In a small house in a place called Kansas, a soldier found a table set for dinner. 4 plates, 4 glasses, 4 sets of utensils. A pot of something unidentifiable sat on the stove, long since dried to black residue. On the wall, a calendar showed a date from 3 months before the fleet's departure. Whatever had happened to humanity, it had happened before the council even voted. Darkith received each report with growing dread. He had prepared for battle. He had prepared for desperate resistance. He had even prepared for the possibility of losing. He had not prepared for this. The humans were simply gone. He contacted the council with a priority message. The response came back within hours, carried by faster-than-light communication drones. The council was equally confused. Their intelligence networks had detected no evacuation. Their deep space sensors had tracked no exodus of refugee ships. As far as anyone could determine, humanity had been in their normal places until the very moment they disappeared. The council ordered an investigation. Scientists and researchers were dispatched to join the fleet. For months, they combed through the abandoned human civilization, trying to understand what had happened. They found clues in fragments. In a laboratory on Mars, a team discovered research notes referring to something called Project Exodus. The notes were incomplete, deliberately erased in parts, but they hinted at theoretical work involving dimensional physics, concepts that council scientists did not recognize, mathematics that did not follow known rules. In the outer reaches of the Sol system, the fleet found the megastructure that had first alarmed the council. It was enormous, a ring of metal and crystal surrounding empty space, but it was cold now, powerless. Whatever purpose it had served was complete. A young Pelori analyst named Cyrath was the first to piece together the truth. She had been studying human entertainment archives, trying to understand the species through their stories. She found recurring themes: tales of escape, dreams of transcendence, fantasies of stepping through doors into other worlds. "They did not run from us," Cyrath told Admiral Darkith, her voice trembling. "They did not hide. They left. They found a way to leave this reality entirely." Darkith stared at her. "That is impossible." "The megastructure," Cyrath continued. "It was a gateway, a door to somewhere else, somewhere our sensors cannot detect because it is not part of our universe." Darkith wanted to dismiss her theory as fantasy, but he had walked the empty streets of human cities. He had seen the evidence of sudden, complete disappearance. And he remembered something a human prisoner had once told him, years ago during the frontier conflicts. "You cannot beat us," the human had said, smiling through blood and broken teeth, "because no matter what you do to us, we will find a way out. We always do." At the time, Darkith had thought it was simple defiance. Now he understood. It had been a promise. He ordered the fleet to return home. The mission was over. There was nothing left to destroy. As the certainty of purpose entered slipspace, Darkith looked back at the Sol system one last time. The yellow star glowed peacefully, surrounded by planets that would spin forever without human feet to walk upon them. Humanity had escaped. They had seen death coming and found a door that led somewhere else, somewhere beyond the reach of fleets and weapons and the fear of elder races. Darkith did not know whether to feel relieved or terrified. He suspected he would feel both for a very long time. The news of humanity's disappearance spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within days, every species knew. Within weeks, the debates had begun. Within months, the fear had taken root. The Galactic Council sent its finest minds to the Sol system. Scientists from 100 different worlds were experts in physics and biology and every field in between. Their mission was simple: find out what happened to the humans, find out where they went, and most importantly, find out if they could come back. Sarath, the young Pelori analyst who had first suggested the dimensional escape theory, was assigned to lead a research team on Mars. Her superiors did not expect much from her. She was young and inexperienced, elevated beyond her station only because she had guessed correctly when others had not. She proved them wrong. For 6 months, Sarath and her team dug through the remains of human civilization on the Red Planet. They explored abandoned research facilities. They recovered damaged data storage devices. They interviewed the few council citizens who had worked alongside humans before the disappearance, trying to understand how they thought. The picture that emerged was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The humans had known the council's decision before it was made. Their intelligence networks had penetrated deeper into galactic politics than anyone had suspected. They had spies in places no one had thought to look. But more than that, they had simply understood their enemies. They had studied the council, analyzed its patterns, and predicted that fear would eventually win. When they realized extinction was coming, they did not panic. They did not attempt to negotiate. They did not prepare for war. Instead, they turned their desperate creativity toward a single goal: escape. Project Exodus had begun nearly a decade before the council vote. At first, it was just theoretical work. A handful of physicists exploring the edges of known science. They asked a simple question: if the universe is hostile, can we leave it? Most council scientists would have dismissed the idea as fantasy. The universe was the universe. There was no outside, no elsewhere, no door to open. But the humans approached the problem differently. They asked what if instead of why not. They built experiments that made no sense and waited to see what happened. What happened changed everything. Sarath found the critical document in a facility buried deep beneath the Martian surface. It was a research report, heavily encrypted, that detailed the discovery of what the humans called the threshold, a boundary layer between their universe and something else, a membrane that could, under the right conditions, be crossed. The science was beyond anything the Council had developed. It used mathematical frameworks that Sarath's colleagues could not follow, concepts that seemed to contradict basic physical laws. But the humans had not been interested in whether their ideas were possible according to accepted theory. They had only been interested in whether they worked. And they had worked. The megastructure in the outer Sol system had been a gate, a machine designed to punch a hole through the threshold and hold it open long enough for billions of people to pass through. The power requirements alone should have been impossible to meet. The humans had met them anyway, building power generation systems that Council engineers still did not fully understand. Sarath presented her findings to Admiral Darkith, who had remained in the Sol system to oversee the investigation. The old Croshan listened in silence, his expression unreadable. "So they escaped," he said finally. "They ran away to another dimension." "Not exactly," Sarath replied. "Based on what I found, they didn't run. They evolved. The threshold isn't just another place. It's a different kind of existence. The human records suggest that passing through it changes you, transforms you into something that can survive there. What kind of something? Sirath hesitated. I don't know. The records become very unclear at that point. The humans themselves didn't seem to know what would happen to them. They only knew that staying meant death. Darkith stood and walked to the window of the command center. Outside, the rust-colored landscape of Mars stretched to the horizon, empty, silent. A monument to a species that had chosen transformation over extinction. Why did they leave everything behind, he asked. Their cities, their ships, their technology? If they could take themselves, why not take their possessions? It was the question that haunted everyone involved in the investigation. Sirath had thought about it for months. She had a theory, but it frightened her. I think, she said slowly, they left it behind because they didn't need it anymore. Whatever they became on the other side of the threshold, it doesn't use ships or cities. It doesn't need technology as we understand it. They left their old existence behind, like a butterfly leaving its cocoon. Darkith turned to face her. His eyes, normally cold and calculating, held something she had never seen in a Crochan before. Fear. Real fear. What did they become? I don't know, but whatever it is, it's not limited by the things that limited them before. Not by space, not by time, maybe not even by the laws of physics as we know them. The implications hung in the air between them. The Council had voted to destroy humanity because they were afraid of what humans might become. In doing so, they had forced humans to become something far worse than anyone had imagined. Darkith's report to the Council was classified at the highest level, but rumors spread anyway. They always did. Within years, the story of humanity's transcendence had become legend. Every species told it differently. To some, it was a cautionary tale about the dangers of pushing too hard against the boundaries of existence. To others, it was an inspiration, proof that any species could overcome its limitations if desperate enough. To the elder races, who had voted for extinction, it was a nightmare that would not end. Velrix, the Senary ambassador, who had called for the vote, received the full classified report in his private quarters. He read it 3 times, each time hoping he had misunderstood. He had not. The humans had escaped. They had transformed into something beyond understanding. And they had done it because he had left them no other choice. That night, Velrix destroyed the music box the human diplomat had given him. He could not bear to hear its melody anymore. Every note reminded him of what he had done. Every note asked the same question. What have we created? Sirath returned to her homeworld after the investigation ended. She wrote papers about her discoveries. She gave lectures. She became famous among scientists as the one who had unraveled the mystery of humanity's disappearance. But sometimes, late at night, she would look up at the stars and wonder. The humans were out there somewhere, or not out there exactly. Somewhere else. Somewhere beyond the sky itself. They had walked through a door that should not exist and become something that should not be possible. She wondered if they were watching. She wondered if they remembered. And she wondered, with a fear she could never quite silence, what they would do if they ever decided to come back. Decades passed, then centuries. The galaxy tried to forget about humanity, but humanity refused to be forgotten. The Sol system was declared a quarantine zone. No ships were allowed within 2 light years of the yellow star. The Council said it was for safety, to prevent contamination from unknown human technologies. Everyone knew the real reason. They were afraid of what might still be there, afraid of what might be watching. But quarantines could not stop curiosity. Over the years, small groups made unauthorized trips to Earth and its abandoned colonies. Scavengers looking for valuable technology. Scientists seeking answers. Religious pilgrims searching for meaning. Most found nothing but empty cities and silence. A few found something else. The first reports came from a research station on the Galactic Rim, far from the Sol system. The scientists there studied unusual spatial phenomena, areas where space itself behaved strangely. One night, their instruments detected something impossible. A geometric pattern had appeared in empty space, a shape made of bent light and twisted gravity. It lasted for 17 seconds. Then it was gone. The scientists reported their findings. The Council dismissed them as equipment malfunction. 3 months later, a colony world in the Tessian sector experienced what became known as the shared dream. During one night cycle, every sapient being on the planet fell into deep sleep at the same moment. All 7 million of them. And all 7 million had the same dream. They dreamed of a vast white plain stretching to infinity beneath a sky that had no stars. They dreamed of standing on that plain, alone but not alone, watched by something they could not see. And they dreamed of a voice speaking in no language they knew but understood perfectly. The voice said, "We remember." The colonists woke screaming. Within weeks, half of them had abandoned the planet. Within months, the colony was empty. The council could not dismiss this. Too many witnesses. Too much fear. They launched an investigation, but the investigators found nothing. The planet was normal. The colonists' memories were real but provided no useful data. Whatever had touched them had left no trace. More incidents followed. A council warship encountered a region of space where its sensors recorded temperatures of absolute zero and absolute heat simultaneously. A trading post received a transmission on frequencies that should not exist, containing a single image. Earth, seen from orbit, with light still glowing in the cities. A species of deep space creatures that had migrated the same route for millions of years suddenly changed course, refusing to pass through a specific area of empty space. The elder races began to whisper a word they had not spoken in eons: ascension. The Sonari knew about ascension. It was part of their oldest histories, memories passed down from before the current galactic cycle. Sometimes, they said, a species could transcend physical existence. They could evolve beyond matter and energy, becoming something that operated on a higher level of reality. Beings of pure thought, pure will, pure existence. The Sonari themselves had once begun this process long ago. They had touched the edges of transcendence before pulling back, choosing to remain in physical form. They remembered the experience as beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. But Sonari ascension had been slow, gradual, a process of millions of years, guided by wisdom and patience. The humans had done it in a single generation, forced by desperation and fear. They had not ascended, they had erupted, and no one knew what that meant. Ambassador Velrix was very old now. He had not attended a council session in decades. His body was failing, his scales growing dull and brittle. He spent his days in a small residence on his homeworld, watching the stars through a viewport and waiting for the end. One night, he received a message. It did not come through any communication system. It simply appeared in his mind, as clear and sharp as his own thoughts. A voice speaking directly into his consciousness, bypassing ears and eyes, and all the normal pathways of perception. The voice said, "We remember the council's decision." Velrix's heart stopped for a moment. He knew instantly and certainly what was speaking to him. "We do not forget," the voice continued. "But we have moved beyond vengeance. You are small things now, and we have larger concerns. Be grateful for our disinterest." Then the voice was gone. Velrix sat in silence for a long time. His hands trembled. His breath came in short gasps. He had spent centuries wondering if the humans would return to punish those who had tried to destroy them. Now he had his answer. They had moved beyond vengeance. They had larger concerns. That should have been comforting. It was not. Because if beings powerful enough to speak directly into minds considered the council too small to bother with, what else was out there that held their attention? What concerns could be larger than the civilization that had once threatened their existence? Velrix never told anyone about the message. He did not need to. Across the galaxy, in private moments of their own, every council member who had voted for humanity's extinction received the same communication, the same words, the same dismissal. They reacted differently. Some fell into despair. Some found relief in the promise that vengeance would not come. Some became obsessed, spending their remaining years trying to understand what the humans had become. But all of them understood the truth. The galaxy was no longer the highest level of existence. There was something above them now, something beyond them, something that had once been human, and that something was watching. The signs continued. Strange phenomena at the edges of map space. Unexplained events that defied scientific analysis. Dreams shared by millions. Whispers heard by no one and everyone. The humans never appeared directly. They never made demands or threats. They simply reminded the galaxy again and again that they were still there, still aware, still remembering. The Council tried to continue as normal. Policies were debated, treaties were signed, wars were fought and ended. But underneath all of it, a new understanding had taken hold. The galaxy was not alone. It was not even the most important thing in existence anymore. They were being observed by something vast and strange, something that had once been as small and scared as they were, something that had chosen to transcend rather than die. And the silence of that observation was louder than any words could be. 1,000 years had passed since the human exodus. The galaxy had changed. The old Galactic Council still existed, but it was weaker now, a shadow of its former power. New civilizations had risen from the chaos of the post-human era. Species that had once been minor players now controlled vast territories. The balance of power had shifted 100 times. But one thing remained constant. Everyone remembered humanity. They had become the central myth of galactic civilization, the species that escaped genocide by becoming gods. Parents told their children the story. Philosophers debated its meaning. Religions incorporated it into their teachings. Some said the humans were gone forever, ascended to a plane of existence where physical beings could never reach them. Others believed they were still watching, waiting for the right moment to return. A few insisted that humans had never really existed at all, that the whole story was a legend created to explain the empty soul system. Karath was a young astronomer who did not care much about legends. She was more interested in facts, hard data, things she could measure and verify. She worked at a small observatory on a remote world at the galaxy's edge, studying stellar phenomena and mapping the movements of distant star clusters. One night, she noticed something strange, a new light in a region of space where no light should be. Her instruments told her it was a star, but it could not be a star. Stars did not simply appear. They formed over millions of years, grew and burned and died according to predictable patterns. They did not materialize out of nothing. Kirath ran every test she could think of. The results were impossible. The object emitted light on wavelengths that did not match any known stellar classification. Spectral analysis revealed elements that should not exist, combinations of matter that contradicted basic physics, and the light pulsed with mathematical precision, rhythms too regular to be natural. It was not a star. It was a signal. Kirath decoded the message with trembling hands. It was simple, repeated in every known galactic language. We are ready to talk. The news spread instantly. Within hours, every government in the galaxy knew. Within days, delegations were being assembled. Within weeks, a diplomatic fleet was on its way to the impossible star. Karath was chosen to join the expedition. She did not know why. Perhaps because she had discovered the signal. Perhaps because she was young and unimportant enough to be expendable. She did not care about the reasons. She only wanted to see what was there. The journey took months. The fleet traveled carefully, jumping from system to system, each ship loaded with diplomats and scientists and soldiers. No one knew what to expect. 1,000 years of silence, and now this, an invitation, a door opening after being closed for so long. When they arrived, Kirath understood why the signal had resembled a star. It was a tear in space, a wound in the fabric of reality, glowing with light that hurt to look at directly. The boundary between the normal universe and something else, held open by forces that the ship's sensors could not comprehend. Light fell into it and did not come out. Radiation twisted around it in patterns that made no geometric sense. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was a door, and something came through. The being that emerged was humanoid, but only in the loosest sense. It had 2 arms, 2 legs, a head with features that might once have been a face, but its form shifted constantly, as if reality could not quite decide what it looked like. Colors moved across its surface that had no names in any language. When it spoke, its voice bypassed ears entirely and resonated directly in the minds of everyone present. "We apologize for the wait," it said. "The transition was more difficult than we expected. We needed time to understand what we had become." Karath found herself moving forward, drawn by curiosity stronger than fear. The being turned to face her, and for a moment she had the sensation of being seen completely. Every atom of her body examined, every thought in her mind understood. "You are young," the being observed. "Good. The young adapt more easily." The delegation's leader, an elderly politician from the council, found his voice. What are you?" "We were human," the being replied. "Now we are something else. We are not sure there is a word for it in your languages. Perhaps there does not need to be." The being explained. When the humans crossed the threshold, they entered a universe unlike anything they had imagined. A place where thought and matter were not separate things, where time moved differently or not at all, where the rules of existence were suggestions rather than laws. They struggled at first. Many did not survive the transition, but those who did learned to adapt, to change, to become something that could thrive in that strange new environment. "It took centuries by your reckoning," the being said, "centuries of confusion and fear and painful growth. We had to unlearn everything we thought we knew about existence. We had to become children again and learn from nothing." "Why did you leave?" someone asked. "Why didn't you stay and fight?" The being's form rippled. Something like sadness passed through its voice. "Because you gave us no choice. Because we saw what was coming and knew we could not survive it as we were. And because, deep down, we had always wanted to know what lay beyond the boundaries of physical existence." The being paused, seeming to gather its thoughts. "But we were angry when we left. We were frightened and desperate and full of rage. We carried that anger with us for a long time. It shaped what we became in ways we are still understanding." Kirith spoke before she could stop herself. "Are you still angry?" The being turned to her. Its face, if it could be called that, arranged itself into something that might have been a smile. "No. Anger requires belief in limitation, belief that something has been taken from you that cannot be returned. We no longer believe in limitation. We have seen the shape of existence, and it is larger than anger." The being looked at the assembled delegation. It seemed to see each of them individually and all of them together. "We came back to offer something, not forgiveness exactly. That word is too small. But a chance, an opportunity to understand what we have learned." "What have you learned?" the council politician asked. "That this galaxy, this universe, is not alone. That there are other things in the darkness beyond reality. Things far older than us, far stranger than anything you have imagined. Some of them are waking up now. Some of them are already moving." The delegation fell silent. Karath felt cold despite the controlled temperature of her suit. "We cannot fight them for you," the being continued. "That is not our place anymore. But we can help you prepare. We can share what we know. We can teach you to see the signs of their approach." The politician was trembling. "Why would you help us? We tried to destroy you." "Yes, you did." The being's voice held no accusation, only acknowledgement. "We remember that. We remember the vote. We remember the fleet that came to burn our worlds." It paused. "We have had 1,000 years to think about revenge, 1,000 years to plan how we might punish those who tried to end us. Do you know what we concluded?" No one answered. "That revenge is a game for small things, a way of pretending that the universe cares about fairness. The universe does not care. It simply is. And we have become part of that isness now. We have no interest in punishment." The being moved, and somehow it was standing right in front of Karath, though she had not seen it travel the distance. "We came back because we remember what it was like to be afraid, to be small and vulnerable in a vast, uncaring cosmos, to see death approaching and have no way to escape." Its voice softened. "We were you once, frightened creatures looking up at the stars and wondering if anything out there wanted to hurt us. We do not wish to be the thing in the darkness that other species fear. We wish to be the light that helps them see." The door in space pulsed behind the being. Light from somewhere else spilled through, colors that had no names and shapes that had no geometry. "We will return when you are ready. When you have decided whether to accept our help or not, the choice is yours. It always has been." The being began to fade, its form dissolving back toward the tear in reality. "But know this, what is coming does not care about your choices. It does not negotiate. It does not offer mercy, it simply consumes. The last words echoed in every mind. You have time. Use it well. And then the being was gone. The tear in space collapsed in on itself, leaving nothing but empty darkness and distant stars. The impossible light had vanished as if it had never existed. The fleet stayed for days, scanning and measuring and searching for any trace of what they had witnessed. They found nothing. Only the memory remained. Karath returned home eventually. She wrote reports. She gave testimony. She became famous as one of the few beings in the galaxy who had spoken directly with a transcended human. People asked her endless questions. What did they look like? What did they want? Were they really gods now? She never knew how to answer. How could she explain that the being she had met was both more and less than a god? That it had been terrifying and comforting in the same moment? That it had offered help while warning of horrors beyond imagination? The galaxy debated for years. Some wanted to accept the human offer. Others feared it was a trap. Others still insisted that the whole encounter had been an elaborate deception. But Karath knew the truth. She had seen it in the being's shifting form, heard it in the harmonics of its voice. The humans had not returned to punish the galaxy for its sins. They had returned because something was coming that was worse than anything the Council had ever imagined. And the species that had once been hunted had chosen to become protectors instead. It was, Karath thought, the most human thing they could have done. She looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there in the darkness, what ancient things were stirring, what horrors were making their way toward the small, warm lights of civilization. And she wondered if, when those things finally arrived, the transformed humans would be enough to stop them. The universe was large and old and full of mysteries. Humanity had stepped into those mysteries and become part of them. Now they were offering to share what they had learned. The galaxy had a choice to make. Karath hoped they would choose wisely. She suspected their survival depended on it.